All right, shalom, friends. Rob Van Hoff here with Rob on the Rock. I'm going to look at our opening of the Torah portion this week, Exodus 18, Yitro, that's Jethro. So we're just going to look at 18 verse 1 here, and I'll do a second video on Telos Torah. We're going to go a little more in detail from another section from chapter 18, but here we're going to look just at 18 verse 1. It's a wonderful passage to open up our Torah portion, and let's do it. We'll read it in Hebrew here. So Exodus 18:1. Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midyan Choten Moshe et kol asher asa Elohim leMoshe uleYisrael amo ki hotzi Adonai et Yisrael mimitzrayim. So let's go a little bit by little bit here. I've got the NASB 2020 in the right column there. The opening is not Yitro, but the verb Vayishma Yitro. And he heard. That is Yitro heard. And then the next four words, Yitro, Kohen Midyan, Choten Moshe, are all describing our subject, Yitro. Jethro, he's a Kohen, and that is, we translate as priest. Midyan, that is of Midian. Choten Moshe means a father-in-law of Moses. So that we have Kohen and Choten. You notice they have the same vocalization, a Cholam and a Tzere. They're really... for those who've done some Hebrew, they're essentially a call participle that have become a noun. Kohen and Choten. Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midyan Choten Moshe. And for that matter, Moshe is even a participle. It's a lamed hey. That's why we have a segel there instead of a tzere, meaning drawing, one who draws. So now here, they're just understood to be functioning as nouns, and of course, Moshe is a name. Yitro heard, and then we learn about who is Yitro. That is the priest of Midian, the father-in-law of Moses. So that's all the subject. So here, as you remember, and often in the Torah, we're given the verb first, then the subject, then the object. And so we would call that VSO. Verb, subject, object. English, we usually don't get away with that. We will say subject, verb, object. And if you're Yoda, you put the verb at the end or something like that. You know how Yoda switches the grammar around. We can still understand it. But Hebrew here, we Vayishma, and he heard, and then it says Yitro did. That is Jethro. Well, how do we know what he heard? Because the first 6 words here, Vayishma, Yitro, Kohen, Midyan, Choten, Moshe, that is all telling us that it's Jethro who heard something. Then we get to this word et, right there. It's spelled Aleph, Tav, with a tzere here, and this in that flags for the Hebrew listener or the Hebrew reader that what's coming next is the direct object of the verb. So, and he heard. What did he hear? It comes after that et. Now in English, we don't need this word, this et marker, because we accomplish the same thing in English by word order. We know by word order. In Greek, you would communicate that it's the object by changing the case to, in most cases, the accusative case. So there's different ways that languages flag what is the subject, what is the verb, what is the object. And in Hebrew, we use the et to mark the definite direct object. So, Vayishma, Yitro, Kohen, Midyan, Choten, Moshe. We still don't know what he heard yet. And then it says, et, kol asher asa Elohim, everything, all which Elohim did or had done. Kol asher asa Elohim. Here again we have verb, then subject, and then indirect object. Le Moshe, what Elohim had done for Moses. U le Yisrael amo, and for or to Israel, his people. So again, we have verb, asa, he did, subject, Elohim, and then le Moshe, u le Yisrael amo, for Moses and for Israel, his people. And then ki, now you see the NASB translates this how, it could be that, hotzi Adonai, how, verb, he brought out, who did? Adonai did. Who, what or whom did he bring out? Et Israel, from Egypt. So we see 3 times in this one verse, verb, subject, object. And that's we see that a lot in the Torah. Vayishma Yitro kohen Midian choten Moshe et kol asher asa Elohim leMoshe uleYisrael amo. Ki hotzi Adonai et Yisrael mimitzrayim. For the Lord had brought Israel up out of Egypt. Okay, just a couple other points on this, which I think is really cool. We're not told how Jethro heard this. He heard it. He heard the report. So someone reported this to him. And what I love about this verse also is that it wasn't a report about how great Moses was. It wasn't a report about how great Israel was. It wasn't even a report that talked about Israel's complaints, because already here in chapter 18 of Exodus, we've heard of numerous times of Israel complaining. You brought us out here to die. You know, couldn't we have died in Egypt? You know, all these complainings against Moses, against God. But that's not the report that Jethro hears. Jethro hears what the Lord has done. And so the 3 verbs here are shema, shin, mem, ayin. That's describing Jethro's reception of information. So Jethro's the subject. So that's the first of the 3 verbs. The second 3 of the 3, asa, and then the third of the 3, hotzi, are what we call perfect forms. The asa is in the call, for those who've done some Hebrew, and hotzi from hifil. But they are both describing the actions of God. So Jethro receives a message. He receives information, not about Moses, not about Israel, not about how Moses and Aaron had been obedient, not about how the children of Israel had complained, nothing about them. They're just the objects. What he hears are the actions of the God of Israel. Kol asher asa Elohim, everything that Elohim had done, everything. That's a big word. Everything. He heard everything that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people. Isn't that wonderful? He heard a report of God's greatness. That is wonderful. And it says, Ki hotzi, for the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. So what we see here is a report that has gone out. We're not told who is taking the report. And it is a true report. It is a good report. And it is not a report about Moses' obedience. It's not a report about Israel's stubbornness. It is a report about the God of Israel and what he has done. And that's the message that he hears and believes. To hear it and to believe it, we know it's true. because later in the passage, if you read continuing in Exodus 18, you'll see that he rejoices. He hears and he believes. He rejoices. So Exodus 18:1, this is our opening verse for our Torah portion. And Yitro, Jethro, is the shorthand title for our Torah portion, that it goes all the way through the 10 words. So it's 18, 19, and 20 of Exodus. So one more time in Hebrew. Vayishma Yitro, Kohen Midian choten Moshe, et kol asher asa Elohim leMoshe uleYisrael am'o. Ki hotzi Adonai et Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, from Egypt. Israel is no longer in Egypt. Israel is no longer in the house of slavery. And why? What did Jethro hear? Was it their good deeds? Was it their good looks? Was it their riches? No. It has nothing to do with what Moses did or what Israel did. It doesn't have to do with Moses' obedience or Israel's complaints. It has to do with what God did. Kol asher asa Elohim, everything that God did. Ki hotzi Adonai et Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. The Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. And that is an awesome thing. That means the defeat of Pharaoh, right? That means the exposure of the powerlessness that Pharaoh and all his religion and all his wise men and all his people and all his statues of gods, they were powerless, because the Creator, the God who made a covenant with Abraham, was fulfilling his covenant promise and coming to advance the story of his great plan of redemption in the world. All right, friends, shalom. That's our little chat today on Exodus 18:1. I'll have another video on the Tales Torah channel that if you want to check out, please do, and subscribe to that channel as well. All right, I hope you all have a great Shabbat.